In the city of Nanjing, there is a wall. Carved into it, a number, 300,000. In Tokyo, government textbooks describe the same 6 weeks with a different phrase. Many casualties. Some add a footnote. The number is still debated. One event. One winter. 2 ways of counting the dead. Last episode, we saw how Korea and Japan learned 2 different stories about one island. Today, the argument is between China and Japan. And this time, the battlefield is a number. Let's begin with what is not disputed. December 1937, Japan and China are at war. After Shanghai falls, the Imperial Japanese Army advances up the Yangtze River toward Nanjing, then the capital of China. On December 13th, the city falls. What happened over the following weeks was documented by people who were there, not Chinese officials, not Japanese soldiers, third parties, a German businessman named John Rabe, who sheltered thousands of civilians and wrote it all down in his diary. An American missionary, Minnie Vautrin, who kept a college campus open as a refuge for women, journalists, doctors, diplomats. Their records describe mass executions of prisoners, killings of civilians, widespread sexual violence, looting, fire. In 2010, a joint historical study commissioned by both the Japanese and Chinese governments confirmed it in writing. Mass killings happened. Even Japan's own foreign ministry states, officially, the killing of non-combatants cannot be denied. So the question that divides 2 nations is not whether, it is how many, and it is who gets to decide. To understand the number war, follow the timeline, because the fight over Nanjing didn't start in 1937. It started decades later, 1937, the massacre itself, 6 weeks that the world's newspapers reported at the time. 1946 to 1948, 2 post-war tribunals count the dead for the first time. The Tokyo Tribunal estimates over 200,000, the Nanjing Tribunal over 300,000. Japan's wartime leaders are convicted. The number 300,000 enters Chinese official memory through a courtroom. Then silence. For 30 years, neither country talks much about Nanjing. China and Japan normalize relations in 1972. History is set aside for diplomacy. 1974. The massacre appears in a Japanese school textbook for the first time. 1982. A textbook controversy erupts. Japan's education ministry is accused of softening wartime language. China lodges its first official protest. Nanjing becomes a diplomatic issue. 1985. China opens the Memorial Hall in Nanjing. The number 300,000 is carved in stone. 2014. China designates December 13th as a National Memorial Day. The state now leads the remembering. 2015. China registers Nanjing documents with UNESCO's Memory of the World. Japan protests, and the following year withholds its UNESCO funding. A massacre in 1937. A number war that is still escalating 80 years later. In Chinese classrooms, the number is not presented as an estimate. 300,000 compatriots, that is the phrase. Carved at the memorial, spoken at the national ceremony, printed in the textbook. To understand why, you need one more piece of history. What China calls the century of humiliation. From the Opium Wars to 1945, China was invaded, divided, and defeated by Britain, by France, by Russia, by Japan. Nanjing is the deepest wound of that century, not only because of the scale, but because it happened in the capital, the symbolic heart of the nation. When China teaches Nanjing, it is not only teaching about Japan, it is teaching. This is what happens when China is weak. Never again be weak. That is why every December 13th, sirens sound across Nanjing. Traffic stops. The nation stands still. And that is why, to most Chinese citizens, questioning the number does not sound like scholarship. It sounds like taking the wound away. Here is what makes Nanjing different from an ordinary historical debate. In China, 300,000 is not a statistic. It is a name for the dead. The Memorial Hall displays victim registries, walls of individual names. Behind the number are families who never found bodies, records burned in war, a city that could not count its own dead while it was dying. So when a foreign scholar says the real number may be lower, even carefully, even with evidence, many Chinese people hear something else. They are trying to shrink the crime. First the number, then the meaning, then the memory itself. This is why the number cannot move. Not because Chinese historians can't do arithmetic, but because in China, the number is the memory. Now, step into a Japanese classroom. A Japanese student today does learn about Nanjing. That may surprise some viewers. Most Japanese textbooks call it the Nanjing Incident. They state that the Japanese army killed many Chinese people, including civilians. But then comes the footnote. There are various theories about the number of victims. The debate continues. Some textbooks say tens of thousands. Some say up to 200,000. Almost none print 300,000 as fact. How did that footnote get there? Through a 40-year legal war inside Japan itself. A historian named Saburo Yanaga sued his own government 3 times over 32 years, arguing that the education ministry was censoring wartime atrocities out of his textbooks. In 1997, Japan's Supreme Court partially agreed. Some of the censorship had been illegal. Understand what that means. Inside Japan, there were people who fought for decades to keep Nanjing in the textbooks, and there were people who fought just as hard to take it out. The Japanese classroom is not one voice. It is a compromise between them, a sentence, and a footnote. So, why won't Japan simply accept 300,000? The mainstream Japanese position, government, and academia is not denial. It goes like this: mass killings happened. Japan's responsibility is real, but history must be counted by evidence, and the evidence cannot support one fixed number. Count only the city or the whole administrative region. Count 6 weeks or 3 months. Count soldiers who threw away their uniforms, prisoners of war. Every choice changes the total, from tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands. Japanese researchers who accept the massacre as fact still estimate anywhere from 40,000 to 200,000. The government's official line, killings occurred. The correct number cannot be determined. From inside Japanese logic, this is intellectual honesty. You do not carve into stone what you cannot prove. From inside Chinese logic, it is evasion. You do not audit a grave. And there is a third layer, politics. A small but loud movement in Japan argues the massacre was exaggerated or never happened. Every time a politician echoes that claim, China sees its suspicion confirmed. The footnote was never about evidence. It was the first step of denial. 2 countries, 1 event, one side counting the dead, the other side auditing the count, both certain the other is playing politics. In episode 1, we asked, where does your history begin? Nanjing teaches a second question, who counts your dead? And what is the number 4? For China, the number is a monument. Its job is to carry the weight of the crime. A monument cannot be negotiated downward. For Japan, the number is a measurement. Its job is to survive cross-examination. A measurement cannot be declared by decree. A monument and a measurement can describe the same event and never agree with each other. The Chinese student is not brainwashed for saying 300,000. The Japanese student is not a denier for saying the number is debated. They were each handed a different question. One was asked, how much did we suffer? The other was asked, what can be proven? Until each side can hear the other's question, they will keep shouting answers past each other. A wall in Nanjing says 300,000. A footnote in Tokyo says the debate continues. Somewhere between them lie the dead, who were never asked what number they wanted to become. If this episode made you want to defend one side before hearing the other, notice that. That instinct is the subject of this channel. Next time on Unlearn, the argument moves north, an ancient kingdom dead for 1,300 years and very much alive in a fight between China and Korea, Goguryeo, and the question of who owns a history that is older than both countries' borders. See you then.